Manual and mechanical handling. Topics to be covered. Introduction. Manual handling hazards and injuries. Injuries caused by manual handling. Manual handling risk assessments. Hierarchy of measures for manual handling operations. Manual handling assessments. Reducing the risk of injury. Manual handling training. Types of mechanical handling and lifting equipment. Conveyors and elevators. Forklift trucks. Introduction. The Manual Handling Operations Regulations recognized this fact and helped to reduce the number of these accidents. Accidents due to poor manual handling techniques still account for over 25% of all reported accidents, and in some occupational sectors, such as the health service, the figure rises above 50%. Much mechanical handling involves lifting equipment, such as cranes and lifts, which present specific hazards to both the users and bystanders. These hazards are reduced by thorough examinations and inspections as required by the Lifting Operations and Lifting Equipment Regulations, LOLA. Manual handling hazards and injuries. The term manual handling refers to the movement of a load by human effort alone. This effort may be applied directly or indirectly through the use of a rope or a lever. Manual handling may include the conveyance of a load or the direct support of a load, such as pushing, tugging, carrying, moving with body force, and straight lifting. Back injuries due to the lifting of heavy loads are prevalent, and several million working days are lost each year due to such injuries. Typical hazards of manual handling include: lifting a load that is overly heavy or difficult causes back pain. Lifting injuries are caused by inadequate lifting posture or technique. Dropping a load and injuring one's foot. Hand injuries caused by lifting sharp-edged or heated loads. Injuries caused by manual handling. Manual handling operations can result in a wide spectrum of acute and chronic worker injuries. Acute injuries result in sick leave from work and a period of rest, during which time the damage heals. Chronic injuries accumulate over time and are frequently irreparable, resulting in ailments such as arthritis and spinal problems. The following are the most prevalent musculoskeletal injuries connected with inadequate manual handling techniques. Muscular sprains and strains occur when a muscular tissue, or ligament or tendon, is stretched beyond its normal range of motion, resulting in weakness, bruising, and painful inflammation of the afflicted area. Such injuries are most commonly found in the back, as well as the arms and wrists. Back injuries include injuries to the discs located in between the spinal vertebrae, in example bones, and can lead to a very painful prolapsed disc lesion, commonly known as a slip disc. This type of injury can lead to other conditions known as lumbago and sciatica, where pain travels down the leg. Trapped nerve usually occurs in the back as a result of another injury but is increased by physical handling. Hernia, this is a rupture of the body cavity wall in the lower abdomen, causing a protrusion of part of the intestine. This condition eventually requires surgery to repair the damage. Cuts, bruising and abrasions, injury produced by carrying loads with unprotected sharp corners or edges eventually necessitates surgery to repair. Fractures, generally of the feet due to the dropping of a load. Fractures of the hand also occur but are less common. Manual handling risk assessments. Hierarchy of measures for manual handling operations. With the introduction of the Manual Handling Operations Regulations, the emphasis during the examination of lifting operations shifted from a simple reliance on safe lifting techniques to analysis, using risk assessment, of the need for manual handling. The regulations established a clear hierarchy of procedures to be taken when an employer is confronted with a manual handling operation. Prevent manual handling actions as much as possible by structuring the work to avoid shifting the load or automating or mechanizing the procedures. If manual handling is unavoidable, a suitable and sufficient risk assessment should be performed. Reduce the risk of injury from those procedures to the greatest extent possible, either by adopting mechanical handling or by improving the task, the load, and the working environment. Manual handling assessments. The regulations identify 4 major aspects that must be considered throughout the assessment. These are the task, the load, the working environment, and the ability of the individual who will be doing the lifting. The task should be thoroughly examined to ensure that all areas of manual handling, including mechanical help, are addressed. Some or all of the following questions are relevant to most manual handling tasks. Is the load being held or manipulated away from the trunk? The greater the distance from the trunk, the more difficult it is to manage the weight and the higher the stress imposed on the back. Is proper body posture being adopted? Feet should be firmly on the planted, slightly apart, and there should be no stooping or twisting of the trunk. Reaching upwards should be avoided since it puts additional strain on the arms, back, and shoulders. The effect of these risk factors is significantly increased if several are present while the task is being performed. Is the load being pushed and pulled excessively? The condition of floor surfaces and the footwear of the individual should be noted so that slips and trips may be avoided. Is there a risk of a sudden movement of the load? The load may be constrained or jammed in some way. Is there a need for frequent or prolonged physical effort? Regular and prolonged tasks can lead to fatigue and a greater risk of injury. Reducing the risk of injury. This involves the introduction of control measures resulting from the manual handling risk assessment. The control measures are classified into 5 groups. However, the first consideration, when it is reasonably practicable, is mechanical help. Mechanical help involves using mechanical aids to assist the manual handling operations such as hand-powered hydraulic hoists, specially adapted trolleys, hoist for lifting patients and roller conveyors. In a more detailed risk assessment, other factors will need to be considered, such as personal protective equipment and psychosocial factors in the work organization. The following points may need to be assessed. Is protective clothing a hindrance to mobility or posture? Is the proper personal protective equipment worn? Is proper consideration given to the planning and timing of rest periods? Is there good communication between managers and employees during risk assessment or workstation design? Is there a mechanism in place to deal with rapid increases in workload? Is adequate training and information been received by employees? Is the worker suffering from any learning difficulties, and if so, has this been taken into consideration in the evaluation? Manual handling training. Training alone will not reduce manual handling injuries. There must also be safe work procedures in place, as well as full implementation of the control measures identified in the manual handling evaluation. The following topics should be addressed in a manual handling training session. Types of injuries associated with manual handling activities. The findings of the manual handling assessment. The recognition of potentially hazardous manual handling operations. The correct use of mechanical handling aids. The proper use of personal protective equipment. Features of the working environment that aid safety in manual handling operations. Good housekeeping issues. Factors that affect the capability of the individual. Types of mechanical handling and lifting equipment. There are 4 elements to mechanical handling, each of which can lead to hazards. These are handling equipment, the load, the workplace and the employees involved. The mechanical handling equipment must have the ability to raise and move the load. It must be faultless, well maintained, and inspected on a regular basis. The hazards associated with such equipment include collisions between people and the equipment and personal injury from being trapped in moving parts of the equipment, such as belt and screw conveyors. The load should be arranged for transportation in such a way that the chance of an accident is minimized. The hazards will be related to the nature of the load, for example, combustible or toxic substances, or the load's security and stability, for example collapse of bales or incorrectly stacked pallets. The workplace should be designed in such a way that workers and the load are kept separated as much as possible. If an overhead crane is to be used, for example, people should be separated or prohibited from the route of the cargo. Employees, others, and anyone else who uses the equipment must be sufficiently trained and competent in its safe operation. Conveyors and elevators. Conveyors transport loads along with a given level which may not be completely horizontal, whereas elevators move loads from one level or floor to another. There are three common forms of conveyor belt: roller and screw conveyors. The most common hazards and preventative measures are the in-running nip, where a hand is trapped between the rotating rollers and the belt. Protection from this hazard can be provided by nip guards and trip devices. Entanglement with the power drive requiring the fitting of fixed guards and the restriction of loose clothing which could become caught in the drive. Loads falling from the conveyor. This can be avoided by edge guards and barriers. Impact against overhead systems. Protection against this hazard may be given by the use of bump caps, warning signs and restricted access. Manual handling hazards. Noise and vibration hazards. Screw conveyors are often used to move very viscous substances and must be equipped with either fixed guards or coverings to prevent accidental access. Riding on belt conveyors should be forbidden, and emergency tripwires or stop buttons should be installed and working at all times. Elevators are used to transport goods between floors, such as the transportation of building bricks to upper stories during the construction of a building or the transportation of grain sacks into the loft of a barn. Guards should be installed at both ends of the elevator as well as around the power drive. The most common threat is injuries from falling weights from elevators. There is also the possibility of manual handling issues at both the feed and discharge ends of the elevator. Forklift trucks. The most common form of mobile handling equipment is the forklift truck. It comes from vehicles known as lift trucks and can be used in factories, on construction sites and on farms. The term forklift truck usually is applied to the counterbalanced lift truck, where the load on the forks is offset by the vehicle's weight over the rear wheels. The reach truck is designed to operate in narrower aisles in warehouses and enables the load to be retracted within the wheelbase. The very narrow corridor, VNA, truck does not turn within the aisle to deposit or retrieve a bag. It is often guided by guides or rails on the floor. On construction sites, forklift trucks of various sizes lift loads onto scaffolding working platforms. The loading bay for such working platforms must be constructed to a higher specification than an ordinary scaffold with standards fitted closer together than is normal, with extra bracing provided for greater rigidity. Summary. In this module, we have covered. The term manual handling refers to the movement of a weight solely by human efforts. Manual handling operations can result in a wide spectrum of acute and chronic worker injuries. Training alone will not reduce manual handling injuries. There must also be safe work procedures in place, as well as full implementation of the control measures identified in the manual handling evaluation. The mechanical handling equipment must have the ability to raise and move the load. The forklift truck is the most prevalent type of mobile handling equipment. Thank you. This is the end of this module. Thanks for watching. Happy learning.